And I think the Lord picks a really marvelous time to have John express that. Because the disciples at this point in the upper room are having an argument about which of them is going to be the greatest in the kingdom. I mean, they're just so self-centered, so immature, selfish, ambitious. Jesus had told them what was going to happen. And as he is there in the shadow of the cross and the dark night is falling over him, all they can think about is their own glory. And here in their ugliest moment, when they are utterly indifferent to his coming suffering, when whatever the indications of his own sorrow were as he gathered with them in intimate fellowship for hours that night, they never picked up anything. This was when they were the ugliest of all. And it says he loved them eis telos. Who is it that he loved? His own, who were in the world. Eis telos. What does that mean? It means, in one sense, to the max. Unto the end, in the sense of complete and perfect and full. He loved them to the max. Another way to say that would be, he loved them to the end of his capacity to love them. And that cannot be said of his love for humanity. It could say he loved them to the last. They deserted him. They denied him. They were ashamed of him. They were cowards. They were disloyal. They were fearful. They were scattered very soon from this time. And you remember when they rendezvoused up in Galilee after his resurrection, what was Jesus' thrice repeated question to Peter? Peter, do you what? Do you love me? Do you love me? You see, Jesus was used to love being demonstrated by obedience because that's how he loved his Father. And Jesus had told Peter to go to Galilee and wait for him, and Peter went back to his old career. He loved them in their disloyalty. His love for them is so astonishing. You can see it in the events that follow. When you get into his promises in this Passover evening, this legacy of Jesus that he gives to them, promises them all these things. He pledges his love to them. He shows his love to them by washing their filthy feet while they were debating who was the greatest, and none would stoop to do that. He shows his love to them later on in the garden. You remember the soldiers came in the garden to take Jesus captive, and Jesus knew very clearly that these men could never survive if they were taken captive. He knew that. He knew that it would be more than they could bear, more than their faith could handle. And so John 18 says that when they came to take Jesus, Jesus went forth, moved, didn't hide, moved right toward the Roman cohort and officers of chief priests and Pharisees with lanterns, torches, and weapons. Verse 4, John 18. He went forth and said, "Whom do you seek?" In other words, he said, I want to know what's on your orders. I want to know who the warrant is for. And they answered him, Jesus the Nazarene. He said to them, I am he. When therefore he said to them, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. Boom. Just the sheer force of his name. The name of God. I am. And again he said to them, whom do you seek? And they said, Jesus the Nazarene. And he was affirming by their own lips that they had absolutely no right to take those disciples prisoner. Why? Verse 8, he said, I told you I am he. If therefore you seek me, let these go their way. Why? They couldn't have handled it. It would have been more than their faith could bear. And so he protected them. And he said this, verse 9, that the word might be fulfilled, which he spoke, of those whom thou hast given me, I lost not one. Did you understand that passage? What Jesus is saying is, if I allowed them to get into that situation and be arrested, I would have lost them. You say, wait a minute. He can't lose his own. That's right. He can't lose his own because he won't lose his own. Not just because he said he won't, but because he enforces what he said. He never lets you be put in a position where your faith could fail to that degree. He protected them from what would have been shattering to them. Later on, after the resurrection, he forgave them, even though they didn't believe in the resurrection, and they're walking along talking to him and moaning about the fact that he's dead. He restored them, even though they were disobedient. He sent them his Holy Spirit, Acts chapter 2, and empowered them to preach the gospel. He loved them to the max. And of course, he showed it on the cross. Greater love has no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. This love, by the way, is eternal. Because in John 14, Jesus said, stop letting your heart be what? Trouble. You believe in God, don't you? Believe in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you, for I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I'll come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And you want to know something? There are no empty rooms in heaven. The rooms he prepares, he fills, which means he keeps the people to whom the rooms have been promised. They don't oversell heaven, nor do they undersell. He faces the cross, sin-bearing, agonizing, execution, painful, lonely, forsaken, yet like a father who loses himself in the love of his children as he himself faces death, Jesus makes sure he holds on to his own. And then as he knows in his own heart he's going to the cross and he's going to be separated from the Father, when he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, he's expressing whatever the reality of that separation was. I think he anticipates that in John 17 when he says, Father, I kept them while I was here. Now you keep them. It's almost as if he says, I've held on to them up to now in that moment when I might not be able to hold on to them because I am bearing the wrath for the sins of all who would ever believe. Father, hold on to them.
Please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more truth and to spread the light of Jesus Christ.